what's going on, FABcasters? R Bar with the Drive Time podcast here. I want to make an announcement to the Marines and sailors at Camp Pendleton that there is a grief recovery course going down at Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton every Tuesday evening. So it's for those who have dealt with grief, loss, undealt with loss, whether the death of a loved one, the death of a spouse, the death of a child, death of anybody in your life, or divorce. So the book they're using is called the Grief Recovery Handbook. I have read this thing. I have listened to the Audible. It's an amazing book. And there's my favorite section in it is the section on forgiveness. So it's so deep. But let's talk about grief. Grief, by definition, is when there's a pattern in your life and all of a sudden that pattern changes and you no longer have that pattern anymore. And it can be, you used to be married and you're no longer married. It could be you had this person in your life and you no longer have them. And there are 5 stages in the grief recovery process. The first stage is often denial. And that's when someone says, man, I can't believe it's over. I can't believe this is the new life. I can't believe things are different now. The second stage in the grief process is then anger. I think of it in debtor language. So anger could be directed towards anybody. It could be redirected towards God, yourself, your neighbor, your husband, your wife. It's this saying of you owe me something. And the antidote to that is forgiveness. But the third stage in the grief recovery process is bargaining. And in bargaining, people start making bargains with God. Like, God, if you bring this person back, then I promise I'll start going to church more. It goes on until they move to the next stage, and that can be depression. And depression, a synonym for depression is suppression. Like if you think of when you're depressing something, you're actually literally pressing it down. So the antonym for depression, suppression, is expression. So in depression, it's a person who's holding things within. Some people, I've heard it defined before as anger turned inward. That's depression. In expression, which I am all about, you get to speak those emotions into the air. You get to let it out. And that's why this is a message to people helpers and to people, if you know someone who's gone through death, divorce, or any kind of grief, any kind of loss, let them express themselves. The worst thing you can do with helping someone with grief is to say something. Premature advice giving is the number one killer of authentic relationships. Premature advice giving, it kills the mood. If I'm dealing with someone with grief, I don't even hand them tissue. You know why? Because a tissue, if I hand a box of tissue to someone who's grieving in the moment, I'm essentially sending a message saying, hey, you know what? Why don't you clean yourself up? That's kind of nasty. You got snot and tears everywhere. Clean yourself up. I don't want to do that. I just sit in the moment. In the scriptures, Job's friends would have done so much good if they just kept their mouths shut. They wouldn't have said anything. Just be there, just your presence, and allowing someone to experience the depth of their emotions. And you can say things, but make sure they're healthy things. Make sure that's like, wow, that's pretty courageous that you would share those feelings. Can you tell me more? Like, tell me about that. Can we stay there for a minute? What's going on there? What's the story behind the tears? And you let them express. So we have here denial, then anger, then bargaining, and then depression. And then the last one is acceptance. And when I think of acceptance, I think of someone who's finally accepted the fact that they can't control life, or they can't control the situations, and they've come to terms with not trying to control it. And in acceptance, there's a lot of grace, there's a lot of hope that happens, but it's someone not wishing that the past would be any better, different, more of, or less than. So in the Grief Recovery Handbook, the authors talk about the mindset of if you ever wished something in your past was better, different, more of, or less than, then you're still going through the grieving process. And when you come to acceptance, it's like for me, instance, okay, I'll just talk about myself. Man, I have a pretty traumatic past, and even some people who know me like, what do you mean, man? You don't seem like you have anything. Well, no, I've gone through some stuff, and I wouldn't take back any of it for anything. Everything I've ever experienced in my past has made me who I am today, and it took a long time to get there. But when I got to the acceptance phase, it was like all of life changed. And for me, it happened right around like 33 years old. I think 33 is a pretty magical number. Maybe that's because Jesus was 33 when he died, and I think that's the perfect age. I think that's when a man becomes a man and a woman, just the lights go on. And so let people grieve. This whole thing about trying to rescue people and fix people it's not helpful. So in our counseling groups, when I do group counseling, or we're sitting in a room, or even in a Bible study setting, or a community group or small group setting, we have some rules that I learned from my old church in Rhode Island at Ocean Point Christian Church. But we had this rule: no scars. SCARS, no scars. S would be no side talk, no sidebars. Like if someone's sharing in a group, especially in a recovery group, Celebrate Recovery, AA, you name it, any kind of small group, there's no side talking. It's disrespectful to the one sharing. SCC, no cell phones, man. Put the cell phones away. If someone's sharing something, put that sucker in the car, or take the battery out if you got a flip phone. Do something. Get rid of this thing, okay? So, SCA. Christians are probably the biggest offenders in this. No advice giving. Don't even give a Bible verse. Don't do anything. Don't tell them it's going to be. Definitely don't quote. God works all things together for those who. Don't quote those passages. They're usually out of context. No advice giving. SCAR. R, it means no rescuing. So rescuing is this: if I shared, man. Truth be told here, man, I just feel like a bad dad, man. I feel like a bad dad because in my mind I knew the Lord was telling me, don't chew this kid out, and I kept doing it. And I just, man, I feel like a loser. I feel like rescuing is someone who's listening to that saying, no, man, you're a good dad. You're a good dad, man. You took your son out to ice cream the other day. Well, if someone's sharing, you just let them share. It doesn't matter what they think about themselves or what they're saying. Allow them to experience the depth of their emotions so they know what they need to get in touch with. And it's only in that moment where healing can happen, because you can't heal what you don't feel. They have to feel it because they have to know what needs to be let go of. But when we insert ourselves and we say, "Now you're a good dad," we've actually interrupted the healing process. And last one is S. I am totally guilty of all of these, especially this last one. But switching is if someone shares something, and then automatically you insert yourself and you say, that reminds me of me when I was, I went through a breakup one time. I went through a divorce one time. And no, man, it's like they weren't asking you for that. Don't do that. I remember one time I was engaged. I was engaged to someone that I was with for 6 years. High school sweetheart. I was like, yeah, this is great. I had this fairy tale little wedding in my mind, and I got my heart broken. And I remember it took 365 days. I remember on day 365, I just woke up. I was living in a garage in LA, and I woke up. I was staring at the ceiling, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm over it. And what it was the stage 5 of the grieving process. I had come to acceptance. And my dad had given me great advice. He says, the faster you chase someone, sometimes the faster they run. My buddy Ernie gave me advice. He goes, have you thanked God for this yet? Thank God this happened now. Maybe a little bit that was from friends and family was rescuing or searching, but at the outset of it, they all let me grieve. I had like 7 house keys. The Mollers, the Cortez family, my brother gave me a key, my sister gave me a key. Everybody gave me keys to their house, and they said, you can lay on this couch as long as you want and feel, I was listening to a lot of Dashboard Confessional, and I was listening to a lot of Michelle Branch, and I had this breakup playlist, and man, my year of grieving was it was intensified by my own wallowing in my self-pity and bitterness and resentment. And but you know what? After the acceptance phase, after that 365th day, man, it was a breath of fresh air. And I would say this, I would do that whole thing over 1,000,000 times to get my wife that I have today. I married my best friend. I have 4 beautiful children. I got 1 senior citizen dog, and the other dog is in, he's in doggy heaven. We'll just say that. And I have no bitterness. I have no resentment over anybody involved in that situation. Nothing but blessings. Man, I'd give everybody in the scenario a hug and tell them I love them. Because that's what life's like when you've accepted, when you've gone through the process, when you're surrounded by a bunch of friends that'll let you do all 5 stages, when you jump into things like the grief recovery every Tuesday at Camp Pendleton, when you go into these classes, it's all part of the journey. And so I encourage everybody, grieve well. Grieve well. You have permission to grieve however you want. Just make sure you're grieving in a community. Don't do it alone. And make sure you grieve in a way that doesn't hurt you or hurt others. All right, I hope to see you there. So this is just another venue for the sailors and Marines at Camp Pendleton to dig deep into your wounds. Like in my Mark Men for Christ Jerusalem Cross, that 5th wound of sadness or loss is something every human being, so long as they can fog a mirror, needs to deal with. So I hope you do it together with me or with another group. And see you later, FABcasters. All right, peace.